Out as a teacher.
I was a teacher for about almost 10 years in Portland Public School District at Wilson High School, actually, in Portland, Oregon. And I was about to go on a Fulbright teacher exchange, or I'd been offered a Fulbright teacher exchange, but I was terrified to do it, to go to Zimbabwe by myself for a year or so. In addition to having a lot of other anxieties and so on, I decided to go to a counselor, and she was also a shamanic practitioner. And working very briefly with her, and then going to Zimbabwe, the shamanic techniques, which were based on the Michael Harner methods, or followed those techniques. Using drums, a drum beat to drive an altered state of consciousness, access to what they call shamanic state of consciousness. And so it was just so effective and life-changing and healing that I became very interested in it. And so after I returned from Zimbabwe, I went back and began to do journeys with her, and she taught me how to do it, and she did a couple like soul retrieval and some other shamanic work. And so I came back in 1996, and the first guide that I met before I went to Zimbabwe was the goddess Demeter. And when I was told her name, and my consciousness was like, well, that's a weird name, then in my vision of her head became like the sun, and this voice said, that's just one of my names. And so when I came back and I began to journey, Demeter was my main guide that I worked with. And for 3 years I was doing that shamanic work. In 1999, I was, like maybe January of 1999, I was told to start doing a humming in my meditation. Particularly told to make the sound whoo, specifically make it sound like bees, buzz, the buzz sound like bees, and to focus on my hara, my energy center in my body. And so
you hold your hands like this. Do you do yoga?
I do sometimes, yeah.
Did you do yoga before?
I did yoga for a little while. Yeah, I did Bikram yoga for a while.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
No, no problem.
So you're humming.
So I'm humming. I'm doing my humming, which I'm told is to help bring up my physical vibration, my body's vibrational frequency, but help me stay grounded. And there was a series of tones, but the main one was the who sound with the kind of. So I was doing this about 3 months. In April of 1999, a small swarm of honeybees came to my house in Portland, Oregon, in the city in Portland, Oregon, in April of 1999, and I felt that somehow that I had called them, with this humming. And so a friend that had some hives before, the hives had died, she had a box that she could give me. So this happened the following day. We put the hives into a swarm, into a hive box. We put the bees in there. But the night when the swarm was hanging in the little cedar tree, I had invited a friend over, and part of this, what was happening with this humming was the energy arising in my body, and it had been, I mean, it's a lot of energy coming in. It had frightened me, so I would stop it, the process. And that night, while the swarm was hanging there, it started again. And a friend of mine who was coming to chaperone a school trip that I was giving, taking some kids to Nevada, he'd come to talk about that, but he had also started studying with my teacher, my shamanic teacher, and so he was able to understand or open up to what was happening. So I told him, this is happening. Can you please, just make sure I don't go crazy, or like just keep an eye on me so I can let it happen. So actually at that point then, that night, I had an experience of a lot of energy coming into my body, and it had a very serpent-like quality, and like coming up the spine, and then there's the vibration of the bees came in, and so after when the bees came in, from that point, then I was able to receive information from them, and
It's like you learned the bee language or something almost.
yeah, somehow. So I began then, when I would do the toning, the humming toning. So then the next day after that initiation experience, what I now know is an initiation experience. I was not aware at the time that this is actually a shamanic path. But so doing the humming, and then later spinning dances, or like a spinning, were ways that I would go into a trance state, and rather than using the drum, and I was receiving information from we would call the overlighting spirit of the honeybee, perhaps. One of the things that I learned after this initiation experience was that Demeter, in ancient times, was given the title the pure mother bee, and her priestesses were called Melissa. And prior to the bees arriving in the physical, I had been taken back to a couple ancient temples, goddess temples. So I knew that there was this ancient tradition. But even in the 3 years of working with Demeter as my main guide, I'd never experienced that aspect of her. That's just one of my names, she said. But actually, from what I've learned now, that tradition goes back. Many of the Greek goddesses, Egyptian goddesses, and so on. In fact, every major religious tradition in the world has some sacred significance attached to honeybees as messengers of the divine. Their Cupid's bow is strung with bees, and so is the Hindu god of love, Kama. Anyway, so I began to receive information from the bees. Part of it was this spiritual information, historical information, which I began to then try to research to confirm what the journeys and so on. So, for example, being taken to Delphi when it was like during Minoan times, and then later reading about things that were found in the first sites, Minoan age sites, that were what I was shown. So things like that, you know, it's very, for us.
We're going to pause it.